Hi, this is Sean Shapiro, and this is another episode of TPS Traffic Jam. It's that podcast that talks about traffic. And today I have Eran Jones. She's a child passenger safety technician, but really an advocate. And she's joining us now to talk about her story and her experiences. And you need to be paying attention to this one. So I bring in Eran. Thanks for coming in, and good to see you again, because it's been a couple of weeks now that since I saw you in person in Toronto at a child safety. It's a child passenger safety summit.
Yeah, it was a safety summit for the company Cybex. So that's where we met.
Well, but you invited me to that event, and I thank you for that, because it was a great experience. There were things that we get to hear about all the time and learn about, in different stories and developments in technology for the safety of child passengers. And because I think that, and I know that it's an easily misunderstood and often neglected area. We get into a car, we put our seatbelts on, we think we're okay. We put a kid into a bucket, into a child safety seat, and slap it in the car. And hey, no problem, I put the seatbelt in, we're good to go. But that's not always the case. It's not always safe just because they're in a seat that looks or is sold as something that's safe. That's not guaranteed just because you bought it in the store.
Right. As we all know, child passenger safety seats are complicated. They're not all the same. They're not all universal. Like, it's not a universal fit for everything. So it's often something that's overlooked. And 73% of seats are installed incorrectly. So our goal as technicians is to bring that number down.
I can tell you, and I was a police officer on the road doing enforcement, whenever I came across a child safety seat and I was stopping someone for another reason, or maybe I was stopping them just for that reason, I inspected it. Now, I was a qualified technician way back when, and I know a few things about them. And I know that they actually have to be attached to the car. And I can't tell you how many times I pulled someone over and gave a little push to the seat, and it was not even secured to the vehicle. It was just sitting on the seat. So we see tremendous issues, and from not being installed properly to not being installed at all. And you've made it a mission to change that, to educate people. And you're doing it on social media, and you're doing it as a technician when people, I guess, book sessions with you?
Yes. Yeah. So people can book private checks with me to make sure that their seats are okay. And I started doing more live stuff too. I just finished a winter gear and car seats on Monday, where I went live for that. So it was pretty interesting. And of course, community clinics to make sure that the community is safe. So
it's so important. We do this kind of stuff with the Toronto Police. In fact, I'm about to get recertified along with members of our team to be freshly recertified technicians, because we want to make sure that we can help people and be up to date with all the changes. And there are developments and changes to technology all the time that make it safer. That's why we don't want people using really old seats that are expired, because I don't think people understand that these things don't last forever, that they actually have a life. The foam on them becomes brittle. It doesn't have the same ability to protect. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that.
So technology changes as well, right? So advancements in safety are always happening. And so if you have a seat that you had 10 years ago, well, that seat doesn't pass the same safety standards as it would today. So what I like to do for parents, sometimes mostly grandparents who don't understand why their seat that they've had in storage for X amount of years is no good, take a lawn chair. You buy a plastic lawn chair, it's green, it's that beautiful bright green. And after multiple years of use, it's not going to be the same bright green that it was when you first bought it. The sun damage, the hot and cold. We're in Canada especially, right? Like we have extremely cold temperatures. So that plastic, although it's made durable, it does get that wear and tear. So an expiry is extremely important to follow to make sure that you have the most current, up-to-date safety standards for your child.
And we're talking about the most important cargo you can put in a car, which is your loved one, your child, whether it be yours or a grandchild. They're important, and keeping them safe should be the number one priority. And if you could do something to make it safer, why wouldn't you? And that sort
Exactly.
of leads me to the laws aren't always the safest. Just because it's legal isn't necessarily the safest way to go. And unfortunately, you know all too well about that. And I didn't warn anybody. I did in my live stream that we were going to talk about things and then it was going to get heavy. And it's about to get heavy because we're going to talk about what led you to becoming a child safety or child passenger safety technician and advocate, and sort of your personal story, if you're okay talking about it.
Yeah. So 10 years ago, March 21st, 2013, we were living in Slave Lake, Alberta, and we were heading to Edmonton. And I buckled up my children according to the law. Actually, I'm proud to say I was actually going above the law in Alberta. They don't have a booster law. So my two oldest children were in booster seats and my son was forward facing. Maybe an hour and a half into our trip, we were hit head on by a reckless driver. Unfortunately, my sister-in-law and two of my children passed away, and myself and my oldest survived. What I know now is that had I been properly educated and had the resources I needed to know that the laws are minimum and they weren't safe even back then, if my children would have been, if my son would have been rear facing and my daughter in a 5-point harness, she would have had the potential to survive. And it's not that they would have survived, right? It's not about like, oh yeah, they totally would have survived. It's they could have survived. So I became a technician after seeing a story online of a child in the US who had suffered the same injuries that killed my son. And as a parent of loss, I was like, oh, well, like, why is this kid alive and why is my son dead? And then I discovered technicians and what they do, and I joined the Child Passenger Safety Association of Canada. There was a local technician course, and it just all flourished from there. And I shared my story for the first time publicly, January 2019, and it went viral from there. So, it's been quite a journey to where I'm at, and helping other parents make sure they don't make the same mistakes I did, and to prevent this tragedy so that, they still have their kids to hug at night, is my life's mission. So it's why I do what I do.
Well, first off, I'm so sorry for your loss, and I know it's been 10 years, but it doesn't get better. I'm sorry that you had to go through that, and I'm sorry that there weren't better options or better laws or better ways of protecting an education to make it possible to have that information before you got it. And I'm so thankful that you are now dedicating your time to making child passengers safer. But people have to be aware of it, and you do a lot of outreach that way. We do a lot of it on our end too, and connecting just makes it better. But it is about being switched on and knowing what the rules are and doing the best thing, even if it's not the easy thing, because legally, and you've got some signage behind you, 4 foot 9 inches tall. 4 foot 9 inches tall, 80 pounds, and 8 years old in Ontario would make you, for following any one of those three, legal for sitting without a booster.
Yeah.
And and that also includes anywhere in the vehicle. But we say back seat till 14 years old. That's a big disconnect. Where you should be and where you might be. So let's talk about that, or let's go to wherever you want to start, because I jumped there because the sign said so. But
so it's really important. It's actually the main reason I chose to put this here, because everybody's back to school and those bigger kids are like, oh, my friend's not riding in a booster, so I don't need one. Well, the truth is, vehicle seatbelts were actually designed for grown men. They were never designed for women, and they were never designed for children. So the top of the belt is so high up for the average, the average man, that it makes it high up on a child who is sitting without a booster. Because the booster is essentially, it raises the child up so the seatbelt will fit properly. Mm-hmm. So if you have that 6-year-old whose friend isn't riding in a booster and that seatbelt is going right across their neck, they're not going to be safe in a collision. That seatbelt locks in a collision. So can you imagine that poor neck whose bones aren't solidified, like the damage it'll do? So the 4 foot 9 is the most important part of all the legislations that it should be made mandatory. So it's really important that parents understand that, those seatbelts are made to protect you, who have fully matured bones, who have, reached puberty. Some parents kind of get awkward when I'm like, has your child reached puberty? And, it's the thing is I need to know for bone ossification. It's all about bone structure and, having the strength to withstand one of those collisions.
In the forward-facing, aside from the booster side, we talk about forward-facing car seats versus rear-facing. Well, rear-facing is safest, and the suggestion is, I believe, 4 years of age before you should turn around. But people say, well, my child doesn't like it. And then they turn it around. And then you put that child at risk because their necks aren't strong enough to hold the weight in the event of a collision. It's putting undue pressure, and that's when tragedy happens.
So my son was 17 months old and he was forward facing. And so his spine wasn't fully developed. And it only takes 0.03 or zero. It's a tiny millimeters for your spine to stretch before it snaps. So imagine a child that their neck isn't fully formed. So their spinal cord will automatically snap with just like even a fender bender could potentially snap a baby's neck if they're too young to be forward facing. Yeah. So protecting that spine, cradling that spine and that spinal cord as long as possible. Again, bone ossification is the main thing.
It's just ensuring you're doing everything you can to protect them and allow them to survive a situation or raise the odds, because it's about chance here. Of survival. It's not about guaranteed survival. So, you talk about rear facing. I don't think people understand just how dangerous it is when it's spinal neck injury. Some people take off their headrests sometimes. Well, headrests not being there, an adult can be killed as a result of their head being, forced back in the event of a rear end collision. Like it's just, we're a lot more fragile as humans in general, and then children are that much more fragile than adults. Yeah. Like it's just a thing, and nobody wants to talk about these things because it's scary. But you talk about all sorts of scary stuff, and I commend you for it. Now, going back to so we talked rear facing to 4 years is suggested by medical professionals. Even if you have to do the origami thing with the children's legs, because the truth is that some kids are tall and it's not going to be fun, and they may complain. But unhappy is better than not alive.
Exactly. And also, the thing is so 4 is ideal, right? However, we do understand kids come in all shapes and sizes, and some kids grow faster than others. So, you really want to make sure that if your child isn't 4 and they've reached the 40 pounds rear facing, or they've reached the 43 inches or whatever that the seat requires, mm-hmm. then okay, you can turn your child forward facing at that point. It's really to reiterate that we would all be safer rear facing.
Hard to drive looking backwards though.
Well, exactly. But we do have the self-driving cars now, so you never know.
We're not quite there, but we're getting there. Yeah. Okay. I was going to say that one of the other reasons and to support this whole concept of rear facing is that it distributes the load of impact, that energy across the entire spine. It is not just one area that has a weak point that is now taking the brunt of that energy. If I can find a video, I'll put it into the edit. But the deal is safest, best practices, and we do understand that if they qualify, you do have the option, but you're making a choice. And then when you make that choice, you have to deal with the consequences.
Yeah, absolutely. And, our laws are outdated, right? So it's really outdated. So the current legislation in the majority of the provinces, some of them have been in place in there since the seatbelt law took into effect, which is a long, long time ago. And then, some of the actual car seat laws are as old as I am, and I'm 35. So it's time for a change. It's time for our governments to start listening to not just my advocacy. I have a whole army of technicians that are, teaming up behind me and helping me push this cause. So, the governments really need to start listening.
And it's tough because we're going to be telling people, or if they're successful at changing laws, it's telling people to do things that might cost money or be uncomfortable or result in complaints from young persons, which, nobody wants to hear complaints. They just want to get to where they're going. So it's tough, but safety comes first. So, when we talk about transitioning from a rear bucket to a forward facing, I went to a convertible for my kids. So they had a bigger seat, more room from the bucket, but they were still able to be rear facing. And then eventually that changed to the front, and it was a whole new world. They saw things like street signs, and they got more involved in my drive. So it was a big progression. They were really excited. And then it's the front seat, back seat, and boosters. So what is there anything in particular about boosters that is really important to share besides the hitting the 4'9"?
So yeah, to come out of the harness to go into the booster seat, ideally you want your child to be 40 pounds and above. The reason being, it's crash test dummies weigh a certain weight. And so if the manufacturer says, oh, you can't put that child in that booster till 40 pounds, you have to absolutely follow that. I mean, they test the seats, they see what can happen. And you want your child to be mature enough to sit in the adult seatbelt, because ideally, even with a booster, you're sitting in the adult seatbelt. And so you want your child to have reached maturity, right? Mental maturity for that part. And we don't see that until 5 and sometimes closer to 6 and 7 before a child is actually mature enough to be able to use the seatbelt without slouching, without falling asleep, like this, and they're not going to reach down and grab a cup that they dropped. You want them to be able to sit still the entire time, which is hard for a child. I do understand, but to sleep upright. And so it's really about that.
And being a good passenger is a real thing.
Yes,
and if you
absolutely.
can't trust them to be a good passenger, then you have to do what's safest for them, and it's, taking control of the situation. And that's a grown-up job. But these are all things that it's a short period of time. These boosts, really, in the frame of the big picture, this isn't a lot of time spent in these chairs, but it's so important. And not all chairs or boosters or products that are child passenger safety related are created equal. So I went to great lengths of research to find one that would give me a larger span, so I could have them. It converted from a forward facing to a booster, and would accommodate a larger child, because you could buy one that has a very short window of a functionality based on size, and some that accommodate much larger ones.
Yeah. So, and the thing too to remember that I try to remind parents as well is that 3-in-1 sale, right, is not always a great option as well. So you always want to make sure that the seat has actually fits your vehicle, right? Because not all seats are universal. There's some seats that are made larger. Some need a bigger recline for rear facing. Some forward facing need special specifications. Each manufacturer has their own criteria for why and how they have to be used. And in Canada, we have a pass-fail system. So if it's on the market, it's safe, but it's safe when used correctly 100% of the time.
So what's the biggest piece of advice for I go to buy? Well, first of all, how do I buy one that knowing nothing, I'm a new dad, a new mom, I've got to buy something because they won't let me take baby home from the hospital without one. How do I buy a bucket? How do I buy when I need the next level? And know that it's going to be right. Do I call a safety technician in to get a consult, or is there a website?
So you can always reach out to technicians. There's technicians all across Canada. CPST.org. If you go on CPST.org, there is actually a link to find a tech. There's also links of all the events happening, which next month we have Child Passenger Safety Week. That will be the week of the 17th of September. There'll be plenty of events and car seat clinics and everything all across Canada. And it's a great resource for parents that are questioning certain aspects of their seat as well. You can always reach out to info@cpsat.org. So we have that resource available. People can always reach out to me as well at Haley and Trenslaw on all social media platforms. And, we can do some virtual checks if I'm not in your area as well. But there are some stores that do have child passenger safety technicians actually on hand. So one of the stores that may or may not, again, you'd have to check at cpsat.org. Some Toys R Us's have trained technicians. In the province of Quebec, there's the Boutique Marie-Hélène, who all their staff is trained as a CPSAT technician. So it was really great as well. Like when I went to Montreal and I did my clinic there, that all the staff was knowledgeable, all trained as technicians. It made it such a fun clinic. And we helped 33 families make sure their kids were safer. So 33 families in a 3-hour period. So it was pretty great. It was amazing. So there's always resources out there.
Are there any things that let's say I've installed it myself? Obviously reading the manual is incredibly important. Like if you can't get to a technician, if you're insistent on do it yourself, read the manual and do what it says would be the starting point. Make sure it's also compliant and within the expiry. But if I was going to get into a car and I wasn't the person who installed it, I didn't know it was done properly. Are there any indicators, like maybe it's loose or there's no back strap or things like that might be indicators that I could see they're an issue?
Yeah, so one of the most common issues that I see at my clinics or my checks is that top tether, which in Canada it's legally mandatory. It helps with the rotational pull, I guess, or push from an impact so that your child doesn't wham forward in the event of a collision. And always, like, if you're concerned about your friend's install or something, you didn't do it, always check at the belt path with your non-dominant hand and make sure that seat's not moving any more than an inch side to side. With, for example, like a bucket seat, the base will flop up at the front a little bit, and that's normal because that's the rotational pull you need in case of a rollover. It's the rebound of the seat. So that's okay. But always check the belt path, non-dominant hand, firm handshake. That's how you know if it's properly installed. And again, not everybody knows every seat. I've seen thousands of seats since I've been a technician. I've installed, I think, pretty much every single seat that's on the Canadian market at this point. And it's not always simple. It's not always simple. And that's why as technicians, when someone comes to us, we have to uninstall the seat to make sure that nothing was missed underneath. It could be a twisted strap in the back. It could be anything. So car seats are a little more complicated than people think. It's not you just put it in and it's done. So
here's a couple of things that popped into my head as we were discussing it. Hand-me-downs. Seats that are gifted to family members that were used by other family members when they had kids. Good idea, bad idea?
So ideally, we would like to see people not purchase seats off of Marketplace, right? Because you don't know the history. You don't know if it's been washed according to the manufacturer's instructions. You don't know if that person is going to lie and say it wasn't in an accident. When buying on Marketplace or, Kijiji or anything like that, you have to ideally trust that stranger with your child's life. So same thing with a family member that's handing you down a seat. There is a checklist available at cpsat.org of stuff you can do for used seats. And ideally, expiry and stuff like that.
So obviously, if you don't know it's a seat's history, you just don't use it.
Exactly.
And we can't guarantee what its history was if you didn't buy it brand new in a box. You mentioned collisions. Absolutely. If it's involved in a collision, it's garbage. And you should actually destroy it or make it unusable. Because if you put it at the corner on the street, someone could pick it up with the intention of getting a free, and these can be very expensive seats. Getting a free seat could save a lot of money, but it could also put you in a big, bad issue if you use it.
Absolutely.
That causes a problem. You mentioned washing it incorrectly, not in accordance with the specs. I understand that the pillows may not be a big deal. Obviously, you don't want to wash padding because that could change the way it reacts in a collision. The biggest issue is the belts and the strapping.
Yeah, so absolutely no harnesses can ever be submerged in water unless you've got specific instructions from the like if you contacted the manufacturer and you're like, I really can't get this vomit smell out. Like, what do I do? Sometimes they'll give you, extra cleaning instructions from them directly that they've tested so that they can be like, oh yeah, use this instead, or never use harsh abrasives. Baking soda, absolutely never use baking soda. What
Wow.
happens is, it's like, that's it. It's abrasive, right? And so it could detach tiny fibers in your harness. You never know. And in your seat, it can rub off some of the flame retardants. And so many of the car seat companies are now making chemical-free flame retardants. And it's very important. So a lot of people are like, I want zero flame retardants. And I'm like, do you know how fast it can catch on fire without it? Even your children's clothes have some sort of retardants in it so that your child doesn't combust into flames.
Mm.
And I would rather have a little bit of chemicals on my child than so.
Yeah, I know that they've done recently. I've seen some wonderful TikToks where child's toys or equipment and safety stuff was washed and then lit on fire, and the difference between unwashed and washed was wild. Like it just took off like a match.
Oh yeah, it's great. Some of our technicians as well, they do tests with their seats and stuff. They're like, oh, this one's been washed like 10, 15 times. And then, yeah, like it's scary how fast it can burn if that flame retardant or it's been washed badly or.
And you think about it. You talk about race car drivers. Well, first off, most people don't think about fire in cars as being a thing, but oddly enough, when collisions occur, fire is a very real possibility.
Yeah. And also, like, if you have like a baby mirror, which we don't recommend baby mirrors as well, because it's a projectile, right? Everything in your vehicle is a projectile. So there's actually a couple seats that have caught fire because of a mirror or have burned.
Concentrating light?
Yeah. Because, your mirror's at an angle and it's hitting and, like it just, it burns.
I would have never thought of that. Okay, so we've talked about the mirrors and fire. We've talked about collisions and seats. What haven't we talked about? Winter clothing. That's a big one, and we're still at summerish, but it's starting to get cooler. What about outside clothing? What about in the dead of winter when we're going to put a child into a car seat? What do we do?
So in the winter, a lot of people are like, oh well, what can I put my kid in? And the answer is safely, just a sweater and layers of clothes. Now, realistically, how many parents are actually going to listen to us technicians when we say not to do that is not much. So we do have safer options that are available, like a car seat poncho, actually. Right here. This is a Houston car seat poncho that I am currently reviewing. It's actually really sweet, really nice and heavy. You just put it on the child, you unzip it, put the straps on, and this goes above. Clearly, it doesn't go behind the child, not to create extra bulk. So that's an option. And then there's car seat safe jackets that are also available. There's one lady actually from Toronto with Tempo Outerwear as well. She makes a 3-in-1 car seat safe jacket. And then there's Buckle Me Baby jackets from the US that also have a really good jacket as well. And a Columbia fleece actually is something we really recommend for little infants in the infant seats.
It's funny you say Columbia fleece because a good friend of mine suggested and now calls it the car jacket. He has the winter jacket and he has the car jacket, both as an adult and as a passenger, as his child. They wear these very thin microfiber type layers, and that gives them a layer of warmth. It is not something that is bulky and padding that takes the pads and creates distance between the seatbelts and the body. So those are the things that are safest.
Yeah, exactly. So like even us adults, we shouldn't have big poofy jackets under our seatbelt because the amount of layers that you have between your seatbelt and your body is that much more space you're going to have if there's a collision, because that belt has to compress against you. So if it's like got like this thick of fabric between you and your seatbelt, you may likely fly out of your vehicle. That seatbelt won't do the job for you as a grown adult.
I think a lot of people don't understand how collisions work. And essentially, if you're traveling at speed, and we'll just use 100 kilometers an hour as a number out of the air, when you hit something that is not moving, the vehicle and you are all traveling at the same speed. And as things make contact, they stop moving or decelerate rapidly. So the bumper stops, it's no longer moving. The rest of the car is still compacting into it. You are still moving. Well, then you travel until your seatbelt stops. Well, your jacket may make contact with the seatbelt, but because the seatbelt is not firmly against your body, you are still traveling at that speed until you have that second moment of free movement, and that can cause other injuries. In fact, your organs moving inside of your body are continuing to travel at speed until they come crashing into your rib cage and so on. There's a lot of things happening in the workings of a collision, and you want to minimize the number of impacts by wearing the appropriate clothing. And it is more technical than most people give it credit for.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So let's say all things are done. We've got a new seat. We've read the instructions. We're wearing the right clothing. We've installed it correctly, and hopefully we've had it checked, if not installed, by a technician. In fact, I don't know about CPST through CPSAC or other organizations, but when I started this 23 years ago as a technician, we would install for people. Do you install for people?
No, ideally, no. There's some situations, some exceptions. Clearly, if there's an extremely pregnant woman that comes for a prenatal check, I'm not going to make her, do all that. I don't want to have to deliver a baby in my yard.
What?
No, thank you. So we do not install for you. True CPST will show you how to install your seat correctly and make sure that you can use it correctly. So when it's, for example, a new seat that came out on the market that a client comes to my house with that I've never played with, I'll be like, okay, so let's learn together. And we'll install it, and I'll show you how it's done. And then I uninstall it, and I make sure that the parent's able to do it themselves. Because you want the parent to be able to replicate what you did when you're not around. You don't want them to come back to you at like 5 o'clock in the morning. I can't do my seat, So,
we are also switching between vehicles so often, and by the way, we do the exact same thing. We stopped installing many, many years ago. We install, and then we uninstall because one was an instructional, and then we watch you install, we check it, and we make sure that you can do it. And that's the way that we impart knowledge, and that's the right way to do it because you need to be able to do this without us there.
Yeah, exactly.
So is that it? We're just safe, we're good to go? Or is there more to the story still?
If you've installed your seat correctly and, it doesn't move side to side and, you're ready to go, there's also you as a passenger that should make sure that your belts are on correctly. So again, just like your child who's in a booster seat in the back, you need to make sure that that belt is always coming across your chest properly, your shoulder, not on your neck. I know some vehicles don't have the adjusting. I'm super short, so I have no choice. I have to make sure it's at the lowest setting, and across your hips, your hip bones. You always have to be safe as a passenger as well. And one thing that's really great is to, make sure that you are also mindful of all the projectiles you have in your vehicle. So we are human. We have coffee, we have change, we have our purses, we have our phones. You shouldn't be texting and driving, but we have our phones in the car. And, so all that's a projectile. And something that we like to tell parents, especially new parents as well, is that scraper in the wintertime as well. So it's another safety tip. That scraper, put it in your trunk.
Yes.
Tie it down if you can, if you have an open trunk, because that's a projectile and that's going to come at you with full force if you're in a collision. Imagine if you have an infant, that can totally harm your child.
For sure.
So,
I was going to say that we really don't take into consideration other things, book bags, computer, laptops, all these things weigh stuff. You wouldn't want to throw your a laptop bag at your kid full of books and computers. Why would you want it to be hitting them in the event of a collision? So yeah, trunk is best. You want to have as little as possible in the passenger compartment that you can. Yep. And anything beyond that is just unnecessary injury. I'll never forget a friend of mine, my old neighbor, was not only in a collision, but he rolled the vehicle. I don't remember exactly how it occurred, but he said that he and the entire contents of the vehicle were covered in Diet Coke, like just coated. When vehicles are in a spin, in a twirl, it's going. Nothing is going to stay in one place. It is going to be everywhere. And you may be severely injured by the contents of your vehicle, maybe even more so than the original collision itself.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. And like speaking of coins, even your change in your car, have you ever got thrown a quarter across the head? It really hurts.
I
So can
bet.
you imagine if you're going like 100 miles an hour and it's not an ideal situation. So you could be hurt more by the coins than even the collisions sometimes.
And you can't use the excuse of, but I'm a good driver, because it doesn't matter how good you are or how good you think you are. Bad things happen to good people.
Yeah,
And
absolutely. Our collision is an example. We were traveling in the winter. It was snowy. The roads weren't closed, so you go and you drive according. We were going about 80, and the guy who hit us was going about 100, 120. So it wasn't us. We were driving safe. It's the other vehicle who hit us that wasn't being safe. So no matter how good you are, you do not know how good the driver in front of you is. You don't know how distracted they are. You don't know if they have their phone, their GPS, it stops working and they go, oh, come on, work. You have no idea. You have to see life in a way that you're preventing collisions and accidents and everything as much as you can. It's all about prevention. Prevention is key.
yeah, be as safe as you can all the time, and prepare for the worst, hope for the best, and be the safe driver. And that is someone who follows the laws, is switched on, is paying attention, is not touching their phone, is not speeding. And if we're even interested in car seats, it suggests that you may be dealing with children. And here's two parts to this. One, protect them with everything you can. There's no undo button. There's no oopsie-doo. There's no do-overs. And remember this, even if there's no collision, everything you do while they're sitting in that chair watching you is teaching them how to be a safe driver. And if you're an unsafe driver, guess what they're going to do when they're in the driver's seat many years from now? So be the best advocate for safety from day one. Even if it makes, putting down that phone, what you have to do, which is what you're supposed to do because it's against the law to use. But if you can do that now, you might save your child's life when they're an adult. Think about that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. They learn from us. So
yeah, the education starts much earlier than you'd think, which is well before the driving lessons begin. At 16. I've been looking forward to talking to you about this stuff for so long, especially since we spoke, a couple weeks ago. Is there anything else you want to tell the world, like as a message from a mom?
Yeah. So don't take life for granted. Things can happen in a matter of minutes, and then you're left with nothing. So it's good for you to have an open mind and listen. If someone's telling you, hey, I don't think your child's installed correctly, or I don't think your child's safe in your vehicle, just maybe listen, and I know it's hard because, I was that parent. Someone actually had told me before the collision happened, oh, well, like your child's not safe. And I was like, hey, let me parent. I'm keeping my kid safe. So, when you know better, you do better. And that's, I think, the most important message out of all of this. When you know better, you do better.
I like that. And we can always know better. We can always learn more. There's always something new and changing. If they want to get in touch with you, the website again?
They can reach out to me personally on all my socials via Haley and Trenslaw. Pretty much every platform is Haley and Trenslaw. And if they want to reach out for a technician near them, cipsac.org. And they'll have all the options to reach out for a technician as well as events near them.
Awesome. And it's one of those things that you have to do the research in advance. And there's no time that's too late. Today's a good day to start researching, learning, and getting help. And I know that we're working with the Toronto Police. The Toronto Police are working on having installers recertified so that we can start offering clinics and helping out here in Toronto. But there's options available today. There's no excuse for putting it off till tomorrow. Do everything you can to keep your children safe. And if you're driving, even if there's no children in the car, do everything you can to keep everybody else's children safe. I can't tell you how many times like I said earlier, when I was an officer on the road doing enforcement, inspecting and finding unsafe situations. But I was also paying attention to those cars because the drivers were using their cell phones, were speeding, were doing other things. So it's great to have your children properly buckled, but be a safe driver. Like, again, there's no undo button. And people roll their eyes and say that I'm going to do what I'm going to do. Just know that it's on you when it does go badly.
Absolutely.
So, Erin, it's been awesome.
It's been great.
I thank you. We'll do this again because I'm sure that questions will come from this. If you do have questions and you put them in the comments, I will make sure that we can share them with Erin and we can get you some answers and we can create some content to address the concerns and questions that you may have. So if you go to trafficcop.ca, I will put a link to CPSAC. We already have a link there, so go to trafficcop.ca and we'll share any resources we can there, and we'll go from there.
Absolutely perfect. Thank you. It was a pleasure.
My pleasure. So we will talk to you soon. And for everyone watching, thank you so much for tuning in. So much for paying attention to the end. And what I probably should put on the bottom of the screen is please share this with every parent you know. Everyone can benefit from this particular episode. Our episodes are all important, but this one's really, really important. So share it, please, and thank you. Welcome to another episode of TPS Traffic Jam, that podcast where we normally jam about traffic, but today we're not. We're talking instead about other stuff and things. Joining me in studio is Jason Tomlinson. He is the president of the Ontario Police Memorial Foundation, and we're talking about an upcoming event. It's the Canadian Police Memorial.
Yes, that's right, in Ottawa, Ontario. The last Sunday of September, each and every year, the Canadian National Peace Officer and Police Officer Memorial takes place at Parliament Hill.
And we go out and we have officers from all over the country who attend to pay the respects of those who have paid the ultimate sacrifice. And we as the service, and you also have another role with the Police Association, go out and support.
Absolutely, yeah. It's an important event, not only for the families of the fallen, but for our brothers and sisters in blue who come together to unify and support the families who've lost loved ones from right across the country. It's a pretty huge event, and it's something to behold, actually.
I've participated many years, for many years, and it's an emotional event. It's an important event for police officers to attend. The public comes out generally to support, but they don't come right in. They don't get that same experience of being right there. However, they can watch online because I know it's broadcast on the internet. I believe it's also on television.
I can't speak to whether or not the Ottawa Memorial is on television, but it is broadcast on the internet. You can watch it on many of the social media channels. We do like to see the people come out and watch the regimental parade go by. It does give us a sense of pride to be able to dress up in our number one uniforms, polish those boots, get the box collars out and honor those who have fallen, and to be supported by the police as well as the public. It's a good feeling to know that there are those out there who still do support the police.
And despite what you hear in the media and the comments and some of my social media posts, there's such a strong support in the public. But very often, the noise of those who don't like us is loud, and this is that opportunity to really come out and support, whether it be online or in person. I said on TV, and as I think back after saying that, I think it is online. I don't even have cable anymore. I watch everything online. So if it's on a big screen, you can do that electronically now. So that is always the last Sunday in September.
That's correct.
So that's going to be the 24th. Is that right?
That's right. September 24th of this year in Ottawa at Parliament Hill.
Okay, and we'll put up the screen, the website for what you need to do to get to watch it. What do you do as the president of the Ontario Memorial? What is your role, and how does that play into the whole federal memorial?
So, as the president of the Ontario Police Memorial, as you know, the first Sunday in May, we come together at Queen's Park for a ceremony of remembrance, and my role is to support the National Memorial and do things like this and come out and make sure that people are aware that we do honor our fallen. And the National Memorial actually covers peace officers and police officers. It's not just exclusive to the police. And I think it's important that we recognize those who live their lives in a way to support and take care of our community.
It's important. It's important because those members who died or were killed in the line of duty, it's not just them. They're gone. It's their memories that are here and their families. And their families are involved in these memorials.
Absolutely. You know, we always say things like, thank you for your sacrifice. And when I was a younger officer, I thought of those who have passed on or those who were killed in the line of duty. And I thought to myself, let's thank them for their sacrifice. But the people we really need to thank are the family members of those who have fallen, because they have to live with that sacrifice each and every day. And not a lot of family members actually put their hand up to say, I want to be the spouse or the daughter or the son of a police officer. And they're kind of thrust into our family. And when a police officer dies in the line of duty, it's incumbent upon the rest of us to support those people for the rest of their lives.
You know, you struck a chord. My wife was questioned when we got married. Like, how can you marry somebody that, you know, they may not come home one day? And that's something that we carry every single day, and so do our spouses. Every day they know that when we say goodbye, it might be for the last time, and that's a lot of weight. That's a heavy weight to carry. Not to mention the children of it. It's different being a law enforcement member. It's different serving your community. And the risks are unlike anyone can go and not come back, but the risk to our profession is just so much higher to any other.
Absolutely. You know, we honor those who die at work. We do a great job of that in the province of Ontario and nationally. There are jobs that are very risky and very dangerous, and any of those people who die at work, you know, we try to honor them. But there are only two jobs in the world where when you go to work, someone may intentionally try to kill you, and that is with the police and a soldier. There are no other professions in the world like those two. And so that's a distinction that we owe our soldiers, and a distinction that we're very proud of in the police profession.
This year, we have a special name, a name that's very close to us because it's a member of not only our service, but this unit, in my old unit, the motor squad. Andrew Hong's name will be added.
That's correct. Yes. We added Andrew to the Ontario Police Memorial this past May. We honored him and several others. But yes, as a Toronto Police Association director and a member of the Toronto Police for the last couple decades, and Honger was a friend of yours and a friend of mine, it is personal. And we want to look after Honger's family and honor him in the best possible way.
It is by far, I mean, it's going to be the toughest one for me. And it is so important that this one, again, for me and for Toronto members to be at, to go to. If you can go.
Absolutely.
I never want another one to be added from our service, or for any service. I don't want anyone that serves to have to be added to this memorial. But this one matters. At least in my lifetime, in my career, this one's really close.
You know, when an officer dies in the line of duty or is killed in the line of duty, it resonates right across the world, not just the community. And when you have a personal relationship, you're suffering on kind of two levels: the personal level of the loss of a friend, and a professional level on the loss of a guardian of our community and somebody that you knew was dedicated to his craft and dedicated to the community and the city of Toronto.
Yeah, it's amazing. No matter how many times I talk about this, never do I get through it without getting emotional. So I forgive me. It's hard. It's hard, and these events tug at the strings and force memories to come out, and there'll be a lot of crying, and you know, a dry eye is rarely seen, but it's important to do it anyway.
Yeah, nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
It's an expression of grief. It is one of the ways that we honor our brothers and sisters who have fallen. We share in that grief, and that's why it's important that we all come together and we stand, shoulder to shoulder with our comrades and our colleagues. And like I said earlier, most importantly, we stand beside Jenny and the kids and any other family members who have suffered this loss. We're there to pick them up and hold them up. And there is no greater honor, there is no greater respect than to come together on those special days in May and in September to do just that.
Yeah. That's well said.
Yeah.
Again, if you're available, you're a police officer, we'd love to have you there. If you are not a police officer, you want to support, whether it be online or in person, we'd love to have your support. Anything you want to tell the world listening that we haven't already talked about?
I just think if I were to wrap it all up succinctly, I would say for the newer officers out there who may not have an understanding of what it means to be part of this family, go out to one of these events and just see what it's like to become part of this big blue family and be proud of it. And for the community, be proud of our officers out there doing a very difficult job in a very difficult time. And more importantly, let's honor police officers by the way they live and not by the way they die or get killed in the line of duty. The moniker of the Ontario Police Memorial Foundation is heroes in life, not death.
Yeah. That I'd love for that to actually ring through, that everyone should hear it. We are your police. We are the police for the people of the city of Toronto. We serve the province and people from all over. And when visitors come, we're their police too. We're there to protect people, to help people, and we do a great job of it. Today, somebody asked, why does the media, why does the public, circle around bad or negative events, but not spend as much time appreciating and recognizing the good stuff. The good stuff happens every single day, but no one's watching. And the bad stuff, that gets amplified. And that's when the circling, happens and people go and make a big event out of it. Bad happens, but the good is there everywhere, and it's seeing it that is powerful, and it's there to be seen.
Yeah, I think the good stuff that happens out there is more common. It happens so much that they wouldn't be able to cover it all.
I think that's, it's true. All those opportunities. And I mean, I've got stories and memories, and I'm sure you do too, going by in the motor squad and pulling over to a lemonade stand and dropping 50 cents in for a cup. Like, these things happen all the time, and it changes and inspires people. And, but it's only the people that are directly involved that get to know about it. Social media helps a lot. We get to share a lot of these stories.
For sure.
But that's a fairly new thing. Anyway, we could talk for hours about all sorts of things, but I think we've covered this one as much as we can. Thank you so much for coming in. It's great. We've been talking about doing this for a little while, and I look forward to being at the event and standing with all of my fellow officers. So,
yeah. Well, I'll see you there.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right.
Thanks so much.
Hey, welcome to another episode of TPS Traffic Jam. My name is Sean Shapiro, and joining me in the studio is Adam Ruppel. He is the co-founder of Drive Festival, and I'm really excited to talk about it. So welcome to the studio. Thanks for coming in.
Hey, I'm excited to be here, Sean. So great to finally meet you.
Yes, we've been talking for a while about different things. We have a lot of the similar interests. We like cars, we like watches. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's coming up. First of all, when is the event? What is the event? Because I'm sure there's many people who love cars but haven't had the opportunity to come out to the festival yet.
Yeah, so we just started this actually 2021 in September. So this will be the third year, and it's at Canadian Tire Motorsport Park. So think of it as an auto show, but fully dynamic. Everything's moving.
That's amazing. If you watch the trailer just on your website,
right,
it is just a sea of beautiful machines.
Right.
And so what can you do? Because do you have to have a car to go? Is it for anyone?
Actually, everybody asks this. We will park your car. You bring an exotic, we'll park it in the exotic area. We also have a show and shine for charity where you can bring a car. But it's really, we pre-organize all the cars that are coming to the show. So manufacturers bring cars. We also have cars for our Dream Car Speed Run, which is a 2-kilometer uphill, so we have about 130 cars every day, and we hand-picked and hand-select these. Then we're going to have about 14 clubs this year bringing cars. We have auto manufacturers bringing cars. So everything that you do, basically, you just drive to Bowmanville Park, and then you can experience this entire event.
So I get to the park. What's going to happen? What am I going to see there? Like, is there, active track?
Yes. So actually many active tracks. And we even internally on this 900-acre park, we have multiple tracks and multiple things going on. We have 3 test tracks, an off-road test track, a manufacturer test track where you can take out vehicles from, I think we have about 6 manufacturers this year. And we even have a performance track where we have some manufacturers, but you can also rent an exotic car. We also have, you can rent Lamborghinis, Ferraris, go out and do a couple laps in your dream car at our event. We also have a go-kart track where you can learn how to go-kart race, because everything's integrated in one of the biggest, if not the biggest, motorsport park in Canada. We also have like a fully off-road track, as I just mentioned, but you can also go on a ride-along with Kawasaki on a side-by-side. We have a specific track, and they're actually going to get air on it. We have an EV launch pad, so it's where you can go in the new Kia EV6 GT that does 600 horsepower, 0 to 60s in 3.4 seconds. And it's included. We have 5 of these going around constantly, just like an amusement park ride. And you can go for a launch in those. We have a Demi-Chalkis autocross zone where you can go with a pro driver in that. And sort of buttoning everything up is our Dream Car, Mobile One Dream Car Speed Run, where you can see ultra high-end exotics driving all weekend long up this Dream Car Speed Run, and race cars, vintage race cars, vintage muscle cars, everything.
Okay, you're telling me all this stuff. I'm excited just hearing you.
Right.
It's me. I grew up loving cars. My my uncles are engineers. They're this passion has been something that's I've been involved in, even though I don't own a supercar.
Right.
I love and appreciate them. So this is perfect for me. And obviously, I'm going to be there. But I love the concept of being able to be interactive, to be able to have these opportunities that really you don't get anywhere else.
You know, a typical car show, and this is when I conceptualized this event, I actually had a FAF Automotive Group. They reached out to me because I'm an event promoter for many years, and they said, we need a new kind of car show, car event in Ontario. And I said, well, I've got to do my research. So I went all around the world checking out car events. And I went to Goodwood Festival of Speed. And it is the world's ultimate automotive event. They have a hill climb, which is like our Dream Car Speed Run. They have test tracks. They integrate manufacturers in a way that you don't get at your typical car show, where it's like everything's behind stanchions and static.
Yeah, look, don't touch.
Right. And ours, we have some of that because we have like car collections. I have like a Ferrari F50 and a LaFerrari. Those are behind ropes, but the owner may take his LaFerrari out and drive it, and everybody gets back and they hear the sound of it and they see the owner get the helmet on and race it up the Dream Car Speed Run. This gives you a lot of opportunities to not only engage with those people, but to see and hear these cars moving, which is a total different experience. Last year, the first time I went passenger, and I decided, you know what, I'm going to go in this friend's Bugatti Chiron. So I went in the Bugatti Chiron. And I felt the power and the sound and everything else. And it doesn't do it justice just seeing it sitting there. It does so much more for everyone that's involved when it gets started up.
Yeah, this sounds like a very different experience altogether. We had a conversation on the phone last week talking about the concept of you own one of these vehicles. You can't drive it the way it was designed and meant to be driven legally on the road.
Correct.
And this gives the owners an opportunity to go,
show their cars,
show it off, enjoy it. And this is the right way to do it. It's a safe environment. It's a responsible environment.
Right. And I actually instruct at the track probably every other week for track days. And people bring their GT3 RSs. Some people bring their Ferraris and different cars out. So some of these cars come to the festival as well. But what we're giving an opportunity for by having that hill climb is that it's not as hard on the cars. So you can take those multi-million-dollar cars. I mean, the first year of the festival, we had a legendary motor car brought an original GT40.
Wow.
And an original Cobra, And these are multi-million-dollar cars, and drove it up the hill. But you'd never see that at a track day because people don't bring $6 million cars and track them at a track day. Maybe the odd time, but very, very rarely. So this is the only chance that you're going to get to see these cars actually being driven by the owners. And some people actually ask me, how can I get to drive this Bugatti Chiron? You can't, but you can go to our performance track and you can rent like a 488 Ferrari. You can rent a Ferrari Challenge car, and you can actually drive on a racetrack with a professional instructor, and they'll give you, help you out.
Do it safely.
Yeah,
because it's racing or being on the track. It's not something where you just push the button and go. There really is a skill to racing. It's something that people have to learn, and before you can become a racing driver approved to be on a track, you have to get a permit essentially approved.
Right, of course. And 25 years ago when I got into cars and I purchased my first sports car, I always thought, how hard can this be? You've got a steering wheel, you got a gas pedal, you got a brake, and my manual, you got a clutch and a gear shift. Like, this shouldn't be that hard. So when I went out to my first track day, I was like, I'm going to be a pro.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I was terrible, absolutely terrible. And I've done hundreds of track days since and some races. And there's still a massive difference between where my level is and the great Canadian race car drivers. And there's even a difference between them and Lewis Hamilton or those kinds of drivers. It's unbelievable when you get into it and you peel back that onion, just how much skill it takes to drive cars at speed on a racetrack.
So much that people don't understand, and we see so many problems on the road where people who get behind these expensive cars or just powerful cars that aren't terribly expensive and end up in situations they weren't planning for, where they crash, lose control, or terrible things happen when people die
Right.
or get seriously injured. And it's because they're not skilled. They don't understand the true dynamics of racing.
And also, like, just your typical driver's license, that doesn't prepare you to all of a sudden you win the lottery and you go buy a 1,400 horsepower Bugatti Chiron or even a 500 or 500 horsepower Corvette. It doesn't prepare you for the dynamics. And we're selling a lot of cars that have tons of horsepower to people that don't know how to actually drive them properly. They don't have the right seating position. They don't know how to hold the steering wheel properly. They don't have the right vision. They're, and this is a situational, they don't have the right situational awareness. And this is what actually coming to the track teaches you. It makes you a better driver on the street.
And everyone I know that drives professionally, and I know a number of the people in the racing community, would never drive the way they do on a track on the road. Just wouldn't even come into consideration.
No, I mean, coming down here to Toronto today, and this isn't a jab at Honda Civics, because normally I haven't seen Honda Civics, but for some reason I got swarmed by like 5 of them, and they were chopping me and cutting me off left, right, and center. And I was like, what is happening? There is a lot of bad driving out there. Yeah. And a ton of bad driving. People driving on the bumpers of other cars, cutting in and out of lanes, moving up and they all think they're race car drivers in their Honda Civics or whatever vehicle they're driving.
My favorite thing, watching aggressive drivers when I'm in a personal vehicle. Obviously, I hope to be able to identify the plate, the driver, and be able to lay charges later. But
yes,
what I find entertaining is that we end up at the same stoplight.
Yes.
At every subsequent stoplight, unless they make a turn.
And they wonder why they have to do brake jobs every, 20,000 kilometers while they're using fuel terribly, while they're so hard on their vehicle and their vehicles don't last. I mean, and they're not getting ahead, and they're putting themselves in danger.
Some would
and
say
other people, more importantly.
100%. But some of them think it's cathartic or therapeutic or it's fun. At least it's fun. But it's really stupid.
It is, because I think a lot of people think that it's like the only time that they get to be powerful, right? They're on the street and they're like, this is my time to shine. Or they're angry and they use that. And
well, emotion is a big problem.
Yeah.
That fear that fuels a lot of problems. But I do love the comments, and we get so many on TikTok and all the
Right.
platforms. One of my favorites was the dial goes up to 280. I'm going to use all of it, or I
Right.
bought 500 horsepower. I'm going to use all of them. And they say this, and I think they're almost being serious, but they really don't have the skills. They're writing checks that they can't cash.
Yeah, and I even feel like now I'm 51. When I was 31, I was a different driver than I am today. Like if I got angry, I got hot. Now I'm like, I just back off because I guess I'm wise enough as you get older just to know this isn't worth it. I'm not teaching them a lesson. There's no lesson I'm not a teacher out on the road. I'm there to be a calm driver, protect myself, protect other people, not get in an accident, and get to my location with my vehicle in one piece.
That's the big thing. I don't want to pay. I don't want to pay to repair what just
Or
got
in the
broken,
insurance, yeah.
for silly things. So we're on the same page there. So let's go back to the festival, because obviously this is promoting the safe use of these
Right.
vehicles. But more about this, the go-karting. Like this is just, there's so many facets. Can you do it all in one day?
Actually, buy a 3-day pass if you really want to experience the whole event. And on the Saturday, it gets so jammed that it's going to be hard to get the test drives. The test drives are actually included in, not the exotics, but they're all included in with the general ticket price. So there's no extra cost for that. Some of the ride-alongs have charity components, so you pay for those because it would just be massive lineups.
Yeah.
Funny enough, the EV Launchpad, because it's sponsored by Aviva, Kia, Ivy, it's included.
Awesome.
So there will be lineups, but on the Friday is the quiet day to come. And if you can't come on the Friday, I'd also suggest coming on the Sunday because it's a little quieter.
What is the
than
cost
Saturday.
of entry? What is it cost? And are there different types of passes besides multiple day versus?
Yeah, right now I believe a Saturday or Sunday ticket for 18 and over is $31.
It's really reasonable.
And kids 12 and under are free.
Wow.
And actually, sorry, it's not even 31. I think it's $26 right now, plus HST. And if you want to buy a 3-day pass, it's $32.
That's all?
That's it.
I was expecting a much bigger ticket price.
Well, we because we're launching this event and we want to keep increasing attendance. Last year we had 19,000. This year we're aiming at 30,000. We just wanted to keep the price at a price point where families can come out and it's a relatively inexpensive day.
That sounds great. If I want to bring my car, what's involved there?
So
I don't have a car worth bringing, by the way, but if I had one.
yeah, I mean, you can apply for the Mobile One Dream Car Speed Run. A little late on that. We generally work with the clubs, but we're also have a show and shine area in general parking where you can pay $20 and you can put your prized possession there, and that will kind of be like premium parking for the for the nice cars.
I like it. If in terms of the big message behind the event, because there's a whole bunch of great stuff going on here, but is there a big singular message, or is it just so many different things about bringing the community together for the car community?
I think this is the first time I've been asked this, so you're kind of putting me on the spot. But I think if we had to come with it, it's that there's so much to transportation and automobiles that automobiles should be fun, you know? And I think that's what the message of Drive Festival. It should be fun and accessible.
It's celebrating driving.
Right.
I like that. We get accused often in the city of Toronto of being car-centric or point in that direction. And while many of us really love cars and everything to do with transportation, and
Right.
that's how I ended up in traffic services, because I'm a motorcycle guy and a car
Right.
guy. Anything motorcycle related at the
Yes.
event?
Actually, we have Kawasaki Aprilia
Okay.
doing test rides.
Really?
Yes. So they have some test bikes there. And if you have your motorcycle license and bring your gear, you can actually ride some bikes there. And you kind of got me on the spot there because I don't have this off the top of my head. My salesperson's probably going to be like, I don't
Why'd you say that?
Yeah. but I believe that's
pretty exciting. We won't hold you to it, but that's very
Yeah.
exciting. Any opportunity to look and experience and really get into a different way of seeing cars. Because the car show, we touched on it briefly earlier. It's a show. Go look, and you don't hear, you don't see, you don't smell. It's more of an experience.
They're actually doing some experiential now, so I have to give them credit. They had a test track inside,
Yes.
and they had a Jeep test track as well. So they did a good job. But I kind of see this as not being a competitor to the auto show, but another way to reach consumers that's different. The auto show's been around for a long time. It's a great following. It's in February. There's not much to do, so it's a great place to see, and they do a very good job in Toronto with the Toronto Auto Show, but ours is just different. It's more experiential.
I like it. I meant to tell you earlier that in terms of knowing how to drive and thinking I got behind the wheel of a simulator.
Yeah.
I figured video games. I'm good with
Right.
video games. I was not good with video games. Like the simulators are
Amazing.
It was shocking, but I was shocked at how bad I was, and I think of myself as a very good driver, and someone who's got track experience and extensive motorcycle training, and I stunk.
Well, yeah, I think there's also it takes a while to be able to understand the simulator because it isn't an exact transfer. People that don't play video games have a little bit harder time with the simulators, but the transfer, Max Verstappen, for instance, is amazing on the simulator and an amazing driver. I think once you're at the top tier, you're going to transfer over. But I find that some people that are quite very good drivers don't necessarily always transfer. It takes a while to transfer to it because you got to get a feel.
It was making me nauseous. This was a static one; it didn't move, and I think that may have been part of the problem.
HIP, they actually do it professionally, and I believe they're out of Ajax, and they have a simulator. I think it's worth $300,000. It actually moves you around to give you the full. To give you the full. So when you're turning, it gives you the full G forces, gives you the downhills, gives you the uphills,
wild.
gives you the acceleration, gives you the braking, and it spins you around, and it looks unbelievable. They gave me a little demonstration of it.
That's cool. I have to head over there because I've spoken to those guys. So I did a podcast with a Tim Hortons owner operator, and I asked,
Right.
what's your favorite donut? And being that you are in the car stage, what's your favorite car?
My favorite
Is that even a fair question? Because it's really categories and
So yeah, actually that's a very fair question because I want to ask you what your favorite car is afterwards. So my favorite car now is not something new. It used to be I was always chasing the new greatest, and I'd tell you right now, my favorite car to drive on the track is probably a Porsche GT3 RS, and I've driven them on the track. I haven't owned one, but I've driven them on the track. Great, just out of the box street car that you can take to the track. Might not choose that as my street car, but my favorite car, I almost bought it, is a Porsche James Dean 550 Spider replica. So it is that little tiny, unfortunately James Dean died in it, but it's actually a little replica. So I'm trying to, in the next 3 or 4 years, get my hands on a replica 550 Spider.
Okay.
And that will be my dream car.
your grail card. That's it.
Yeah.
I
Can't afford a real one. They're $5 million.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't have a budget for the things I like, but there's so many vehicles that I've always loved. But I'm 6'5", I'm 300 pounds. I don't fit into these vehicles.
Right.
So I've always wanted to get a Humvee.
Okay, an original one.
an original military spec or
diesel with a diesel.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
And I've driven them. I've rented
Yeah.
some. I've played with them. I love them. They're not exactly comfortable, roomy, magical vehicles, but I really love them.
They're cool. And we've actually had some military style vehicles at our event. I believe we've had one of the original Humvees as well, the Hummers. Last year we actually had the on display. General Motors brought out the new Hummer
Electric one?
EV.
Right.
Do you like that?
So I actually had a second hand. I was going to buy it's an H2, isn't it? They modeled on the
No,
H2.
I think it's more it's bigger.
H1?
It's not an H1, but
It's
it's a
somewhere between.
bigger.
So-
it's in between the H2 and H1, and it's a full EV.
So
vehicle.
if H1 is the Humvee equivalent, and then there's an H2 was the smaller one built on
Yeah,
a Suburban
and then they had
frame.
an H3, I think.
H3 was weird. I thought I wanted one. I I had the guy bring it in.
An H2.
H2 had to be basically a big
Right.
Suburban. And I got in, and it had ostrich leather seats, and it was green. It was beautiful. I looked out the window, and I saw the interior of the vehicle, because the windows, I mean, they were below my sideline. So I couldn't buy it, because I couldn't drive it, because I couldn't fit into it. I was very disappointed, because I was
Right.
close to having sort of what I wanted, but anyway, it wasn't meant to be. And I've been a big fan of the Porsches. 911s, like that's all I ever wanted, was a Porsche
Right.
as a kid. Or a Vector W8 twin turbo. I thought that was pretty cool.
That cool car. I don't think it's a great car to drive.
No, I've seen nothing good about it after the fact.
Yeah.
But I had a poster of it in my room when I was a kid.
And what you do you remember the movie that it was in where it crashed?
No.
They used it in a movie, and I think it was Something Sun, and it had a few big actors in it. Wesley Snipes,
Really?
I believe, was in it. You could look it up, but the Vector twin turbo had a big part in, or maybe a small part, but a big part as a car in a movie. We're talking in the early 90s, because it was like that was like a late 80s, early 90s.
Oh, 100%.
And it had kind of, if it had a full like cockpit, like about 1,000 buttons.
Yeah, it was very, for the time, very futuristic.
Right.
And I didn't realize they actually made a new version of it, or a newer version, more. That one's not for me. I like the original one but it's about dream cars. It has nothing to do with the reality of getting behind the wheel.
No.
It's just being able to look at that car and go, wow.
Yeah, if you drove that car, you don't want to drive it. You'd be probably very disappointed
The Countach.
compared to
The
the
Countach
Countach.
growing up, I thought that was going to be the bee's knees. Again,
Yeah.
another one of the. There were some classic cars that just meant everything in terms of my childhood and wanting cars.
I got to drive a 1956 Mercedes Gullwing. I believe it's coming back to Drive
Really?
Festival, and I would say that if I like won the lottery or found out that I had an uncle who was
Left
one of
you
the
a small
first,
fortune, yeah?
who was one of the first owners of Microsoft or something, and he left me a small fortune, then I think that might be my grail car. Like,
Really?
but they're about $1.5 million, $2 million bucks.
Oh, yeah.
But I got to drive it, and
So I see that's enough for me. I don't want to insure it. I don't want to. I don't want to.
yeah, the
repair it.
headaches,
Yeah, there's
because
a
there
lot.
is a lot behind these cars, like a lot of maintenance that goes into hypercars, supercars. That's the one great thing about certain manufacturers, like the cars are the newer ones are much more reliable.
What do you think about electric cars?
I actually really I got to drive a Taycan 4S
I don't even know what that is.
Porsche, the Porsche
Okay.
EV, and I thought it was terrific.
Okay.
That being said, I think we're still a little bit away from the charging network. I drive a fair distance,
Yeah.
so I just don't see how it fits in right now. But I think in 3 or 4 years of our 2-car family or potentially 3-car family, the next one's going to be an EV.
I love the concept.
Right.
I really do love the concept, and as many people say, it's range anxiety. I think that's what's
Right.
what the terminology is for it. I did go and put a deposit down on a Cybertruck.
Oh, everybody. That is the most polarizing vehicle. People either love it or they hate it. There's no middle ground where people say, I'm not sure about the Cybertruck.
So I like the original one that was on stage that had the broken
Right.
window. I don't know if I like the incarnations that are coming out in the trying to make it ready for sale.
Right.
I think.
And it's late.
Oh, it's years late. Like I basically put a deposit going on. Maybe I can afford it in 3 years, and it's been over 3 years.
Like they haven't even launched. No, Tesla, I think, are doing an amazing job for EVs. They have the infrastructure, the technology. They're doing an amazing job, but they don't even have the Roadster out yet. And I was supposed to be out years ago, and looks pretty amazing. But I haven't seen one. We'd love to have one at Drive Festival, but I don't even know if
You
there's
should
any around.
text that Elon guy.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to get back to me.
You know the
And I don't use his Twitter or
formerly-
X.
the
whatever.
platform formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah.
My whole thing is, and I have a very different outlook on vehicles, and my wants and needs are very different than
Right.
100 years ago. And that is, I had to fit in it. I've got to be able to haul my family.
Right.
It has to be. I'm a one vehicle guy, and my motorcycle sits parked in my garage. I want something that's comfy, that gives them all my creature comforts. I would love something that does all the autopilot-y stuff that does it
Right.
within, with supervision. But I'm not prepared to break the bank. To get a new one right now. I'm very happy with the one I have.
And actually, I'm going to be next week testing the EV6 GT. So they're loaning me one, and I'm doing launches for an hour straight.
Wow.
So zero to test it to make sure to see where we need to be with battery charge, how we're going to
Interesting.
create the course. We know it's going to work, but we're just like getting some baselines on it because it's the first year for doing that. So I'm actually going to be using that car and full acceleration. As far as acceleration, the EVs accelerate way faster.
That's pure torque, right?
Yeah. Like I just saw the world's fastest car is a Rimac, and it did 0 to 60 launches in 1.6 seconds.
Is that the Czechoslovakian? Is that the one that's...
Yeah, and actually I believe Pininfarina uses their architecture for that car, but it's something like 1,800 horsepower and 1,200 foot-pounds of torque.
Wow.
Don't even quote me. I don't know the.
It's a lot,
but it's a lot. But I just saw somebody did a YouTube video actually this morning on the world's fastest accelerating car, and it was.
Did someone crash one of their original ones?
Yeah, it was Richard Hammond from Talk Beer.
Yes.
He flipped it. And that's one of the things that, asking you, some of these fires that have happened with the EVs, putting them out, it has been a bit of a challenge, let's say.
Different those batteries can even being submerged or
Right.
covered in water for hours can reignite. I'm obviously not a firefighter, but my understanding is that they've had to develop new technologies to combat these
Right.
vehicle fires. And when we impound a vehicle or a vehicle is being towed to an impound, subsequent to a collision, they have to be separated now,
Right.
Because they could combust again.
Yeah, and in 20 years, we don't know if we're going to have this conversation, whether hydrogen's going to be a new thing, whether it's some kind of other biofuel, or whether EVs are going to be the benchmark, or maybe it's going to be a combination of all of it.
Well, interestingly, I've been told that they're working on some new technology, new battery technology that will be less prone to fire,
Right.
or at least be easier to respond to when it comes to a fire situation. And that I'm not afraid of the flames. I don't want to be in a car
Right.
fire, but
Exactly. It's rare.
But we had something I think it was a Tesla mounted a curb in Toronto, not in the not too distant past,
Right.
And distant past, recent past. Anyway, it was recently, and it was on fire, and it was a whole big to deal with it. And I've seen technologies. Listen, it's created technology by virtue of creating a problem. They're finding new solutions, so it's great. Someone's making money.
But we're also going to be talking about in 10 or 20 years autonomous driving and how that is going to really change the landscape. I actually feel that that's going to help things long term once we can get that technology going.
Oh yeah, if you look, I think Elon is the one who talked about
Right.
the fact that one day nobody will own a car at all.
Right.
You just call
You're
for
just-
one, it'll pick you up and it'll take you.
It'll
where
be
you
like
can go.
Uber, but who knows if it will be Uber or it will be Tesla or it will be General Motors or a combination or Toyota.
Hopes. I have high hopes. And in terms of technologies, and we've gone way off the track
Oh,
of
of
discussing
Drive Festival.
Drive Festival, yeah.
Yeah.
But we talk about autonomous vehicles, which there are none really available. There's a
Right.
pilot in the province of Ontario. There's only 2 companies or 2 applicants or approved
Right.
bodies that are using them. One's a university, and one is GATIC, which is working with Loblaws. They have like 5 vehicles total in the province that are operating in any level of autonomy, which is level 4 or 5. When you talk about Tesla in their full self-drive mode, it's not self-drive. It's beta software, and it still requires the driver to be fully involved, engaged, because they're responsible for everything.
100%.
But if you remember Time Cop?
Yes.
And he gets in his take me home, and there's no windows in the car. He takes a nap in the back, gets but you could live anywhere. You could do anything. It would change
Right.
your whole life. But it would also mean that everything on the road would respond to everything around you autonomously, meaning if someone walked into the road, everything would stop.
Right.
That's a lot of power and a lot of concern that I have for someone to have a protest and shut down a highway.
Yeah, that's an interesting because
It's
I guess the passenger in the car can get out and say, "Get out of the way." Right?
Well, we've seen some of that recently, where
Right.
people who are protesting and people get out and try. It doesn't end well. This is all bad stuff. But it is interesting. It adds another layer of what if.
Yeah, because if you're driving that car, you can then take another lane and drive around them, or you can back up and do a UE, but is the autonomous car going to be smart enough to realize
how long is it going to take to do that? Because we usually operate faster than most computers can. I watched when Honda Indy was in. We had some road closures right at Lakeshore and in Strawn, and what I assume was a Tesla in full self drive drove to the end of a closed road and had pylons, and it was just hunting, trying to figure out what to do next. And eventually, I assume the driver then took over and did a U-turn and went back from whence they came. But it was interesting because it was not behavior that you would say is normal. If anything, I would have said that's an impaired driver. But I think it was a computer.
Yeah, but also keep in mind that AI technology is also like changing the game. It's going to change everything in the next 5 or 8 years. But we're way off Drive Festival now.
Yeah, we'll see how this may have to be edited after all. So dates. Let's talk about so getting back to that Drive Festival. Getting back to Drive Festival. When is it? Where we've covered where it is, and how can we get in touch with you? How can I buy my tickets now? All that good stuff.
Okay, so it's September 8th to 10th, Drive Festival presented by Mobile One. And go to our website, drivefestival.com. Tickets are available there. The earlier you buy the tickets, the better the pricing for you. And if you need to reach out to us, you can reach out to us, info@drivefestival.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks for coming in. We obviously can talk forever.
Yeah, we went off down a rabbit hole there for a little bit.
Yeah,
it was cool.
And I'm sure we'll speak again. And I look forward to attending the event because
awesome.
That happens to be a very good weekend.
And I know a police officer that can take you for a run up at the hill.
With that particular police officer, I may have been in a car on a track with him already.
Right.
I think I'm good.
Okay, good.
Well, thanks again.
Thanks so much, Sean.